What if everything that you thought was truth was a lie, and everything was not as it seems to be? What if everything that you knew about the pyramids turns out to be a grain of sand in the vast desert of knowledge? What if there was a unifying matrix to the universe where the keys unlock the code?
There were giants in the earth in those days, and when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. The Mayans and Incas of South America believed a race of giants existed before the great floods of Noah, and they spoke of a powerful ark that housed the DNA of all male and female species of all land animals on Earth. Many other civilizations, along with the Maya, worshipped giants as gods, and others carved their likeness into stones, into jewelry, precious personal items, idols, and told their stories in rock carvings written in ancient and in not so ancient languages. In Greek and Roman history, it is written that blood falling from the heavens covered the earth, and that the earth goddess Gaia, or Mother Earth, whom it is said gave birth to the Titans, who were a race of fearsome giants. It is said in the books of Enoch that they interbred with humans, and the children of the Nephilim were smaller but warlike giants, known as the Gibberim or Gabarim, the fabled heroes of old, men of renown, that is recorded in the Bible. Over 1,000 accounts exist of 7 feet and much taller skeletons up to 42 feet in height that have reportedly been unearthed from ancient burial sites and mounds over a 200-year period. What is more staggering is that these events refer only to North American accounts. Newspaper accounts, town and county histories, letters, scientific journals, diaries, and personal photos and images all add to the impressive weight of evidence that giants existed in humanity's recent past, and it may surprise you to know that they still exist amongst us today. Scientists and archaeologists would like us to believe that gigantism is just a mutation, a birth defect, a rogue gene, or an accident of nature, and this may indeed be true in a few isolated cases. But, and this is another of those big buts, it seems from simple and deep dive knowledge research that there must indeed have been hundreds of thousands of these so-called giant gene defects from all continents of the world. This factual-based knowledge stretches the boundaries of the basis of probability theory, or any basic belief principle, so far beyond its breaking point or boundaries as to make their theory totally incredulous to human intelligence at any level. This, combined with the factual suppression of even the most basic of knowledge of giants by the illegal practice of being wiped from Wikipedia, and personal websites being illegally suppressed and censored, and daily online platform censorship on Twitter, Facebook, and now on Telegram, to name but a few. This, combined with almost zero mainstream media factual information and truth, has led me to discern that there may indeed be a deeper and darker narrative at play here. The evidence that has been uncovered over many decades by many notable household names, the leaders of so-called independent pearls of wisdom in the Smithsonian Institute, and notable professors of ancient Egyptian history, suggest that independent research groups really have no interest in the truth, but in preserving their elitist status and following secret societies or private members' clubs, such as Bohemian Grove, the Trilateral Commission, or the Vril Society, which was mentioned briefly in Series 1, Part 3, and it should be noted, many others. We will revisit these secret societies many times during this series as we begin the long process of understanding the interconnections and unlocking more first-level understanding or basic conceptual knowledge subject keys. There is, it seems, not a whisper of factual truth from our so-called senior historians, or indeed from any recognized Western institution, including the Smithsonian Institute. The question to be asked is a simple one. Why is that? It is a fact and confirmed by their own admission that the Smithsonian ethnology reports have carefully documented these facts about the existence of giants around the world. But yet, it seems with the help of the mainstream media, governments, and in some cases, direct military actions or secret military-funded black operations by which they control and deliberately falsify historical data by the willful destruction of all physical evidence. The simple adage of, "There's nothing to see here, folks, therefore it's all a lie," absolutely prevails. They have deliberately suppressed this evidence, perhaps or perhaps not, simply because it does not fit into their falsely created version of humanity's history, and for other, more important reasons, which we'll discuss in greater detail later in this series. The author Brad Steiger, who has sold over 50 million books and who has written extensively on giants, states that, over the last 200 years, mass graves of giants were opened in the American Northwest. They contained the remains of women over 7 feet tall, and men 8 to 10 feet tall, and some significantly larger, and yet no trace exists of them today. Why is that? There is also clear and ample image evidence, both today and in antiquity, that some giant skulls had horns, extra rows of teeth, and 6 toes. This was further and clearly evidenced by the discovery of the giant footprint in the South African Hinterlands. This is the most spectacular footprint in rock found anywhere on planet Earth. There are others, but none are as fully formed and obvious as this one. The Smithsonian Institute's greatest minds state that this is a natural rock formation. They clearly must believe that the world's people are gullible idiots and mindless drones if anyone was to believe that this was naturally created. This footprint was discovered in 1931 by a farmer called Stoffel Coetzee while out hunting, and it has remained one of the most controversial sites in archaeology and geological research. The mainstream media silence for almost a century is further evidence of the suppression of the factual knowledge of humanity's history. This footprint, cast in granite rock, is located near the Swaziland border region of South Africa, a region known to have produced a vast amount of gold. Close examination of the footprint indicates that this was a 6-toed giant, or ogre, as the original tribes of the region recorded them, both in writings, cave paintings, and by word of mouth passed down through the ages. By the time I have completed this short synopsis on the Herculean titans that only walked the earth thousands of years ago, but walked the earth less than 500 years ago in great numbers, I can guarantee that you will begin to understand that truth and facts are brutally suppressed in today's world, and indeed dating back, in the case of giants, that is around 200 years of suppression of the truth. Interestingly, and from the evidence uncovered, and not coincidentally, this is almost as long as the Smithsonian Institute has been active. The sheer volume of evidence that is available is staggering, and we will start our long journey of discovery of the truth and facts in the northern United States of America, and work our way around the world in this and in deeper esoteric discussions in future episodes on the giants that walked with the dinosaurs and also with modern man. An ancient Cyclops skull was found recently in Indonesia, in the hinterlands of Bohol, Bukidnon and Agusan, in limestone caves. The head had only one eye socket, and it was in the middle of its forehead. Scientists and archaeologists will say that this was a birth defect. But actual history, medical evidence, and myths and fables, however, indicate otherwise, as it seems all ancient myths have a basis in fact. This evidence strongly indicates that the giant Cyclops creature of Greek mythology might not be a myth, and therefore this should be open to all to seek the truth, and not the forcibly limited by governments to their selected few whom it seems follow their own agendas. The giants also have attained many names from different continents and historical ages, dating up to and including the 19th and early 20th centuries. These include the Titans, the Gibberim, the Gabarim, the Anakim, the Nephilim, the Eljo, the Cyclops, the Igigi, the Sabeti, to name but a few. The Book of Enoch states that the giants were over 900 meters in height. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against themselves and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh, and drink their blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. 3,000 ells. 1 ell is about 1/3 of a meter. So these giants were indeed giants. Their length was about 900 meters. Even the Greek translation speaks of 300 cubits. 1 cubit is 0.45 meters. So even in the Greek tradition, these giants had a length of upwards of 135 meters. This is not the only place where it is spoken of their enormous length, as we will see in later chapters. In both myths, legends, and sages, it speaks of giants with a length of about 6 to 90 meters. The Cyclops with 1 eye was one of those giants, but there were many, many more. In verse 5 of the Book of Enoch, we read a dazzling story that the Nephilim began to sin against birds, beasts, and reptiles, and even began to eat their flesh and drink their blood. Reading this story makes it more understandable that what is written in legends and myths, and where it is told that the most strange beings once existed on earth. They definitely had extraordinarily large skulls and were extraordinarily large people. And they lived in great numbers across all continents and on the islands of Anak, formerly South Yemen, and Anat, which is now Malta, and were feared by all who came into direct contact with them. The fable of Goliath the Philistine, whom the Bible states clearly was one of 5 giant brothers, is perhaps the most famous story of giants ever told. The information on Goliath and the Ark of the Covenant is written and contained within the Jewish book of the Midrash, and it is stated in this book that Goliath stole the fabled Ark of the Covenant from the Israelites after decimating their armies in battle, and triumphantly returned carrying the ark over one shoulder. We all know what happened next, when David slew Goliath by first stunning him with a stone and then using the great sword of Goliath to decapitate him. This incident occurred around 8000 BC. We know this to be true, as there is a stone relic dated from that period that names the house of David, who became king of the Israelites. Less than 3 kilometers from the known and accepted site of the battle is a mound that is said to be the resting place of the giant Goliath. But, alas, no one knows the truth of this, as it has allegedly never been excavated. Why is that? We now have established biblical interconnections to multiple Bible books and references to the deliberately religiously suppressed Book of Enoch, which is aptly nicknamed the Book of the Gibberim, or in modern translation simply the Book of Giants. This book and its contents were also heavily suppressed and illegally removed from the modern version of our Bible, for reasons that only now are truly beginning to understand. As humanity's consciousness grows stronger, our thirst for truth and facts grows exponentially stronger. Esoteric knowledge of the truths of religion is also a vital but deeply sensitive interconnection component and has its own religious knowledge keys waiting to be unlocked. We will be discussing the esoteric, physical, and religious consciousness in greater detail and complexity later in the series. In summary so far, the interconnection to stargates, teleportation, and ley lines from the first 3 episodes are now also firmly established. As it seems from factual and extensive ethnic historical evidence, humanity's history states that the giants used stargates or portals, evidenced in episode 1, to teleport, evidenced in episodes 1 and 2, themselves across Gaia or Mother Earth, and indeed beyond time and space as we know it. They use ley lines, evidence in episode 3, or what you now know as the extensive unlimited energy source or power grids of the Earth. It seems that the giants and gods of the past used ancient technologies way beyond the well-known scientific research of Nicholas Tesla in the 20th century and John Keely in the 19th century, and many others. It is when this knowledge is combined with the naming of the Titans, the Nephilim, and the Gibberim, who in turn are connected to the most advanced civilizations in antiquity, the Greeks and the Romans, then it seems that the giants are suddenly becoming much more than just mythical creatures, and instead becoming an integral part of our true but deliberately suppressed history, from those that deem and falsely name themselves worthy of being worshipped as future gods over humanity. An example of this deliberate historical truth suppression is that in the mid to late 1900s, the Smithsonian Institute lost a case in the Supreme Court in the United States of America. The ruling was that they were ordered to reveal their involvement in the destruction of tens of thousands of giant skeletons in the early 1900s, along with the cutting down of prehistoric-sized trees. This evidence was, according to the article, to be released in 2015, which never occurred. I discern by using the simple on the balance of probability principle that Titans existed and still exist, and there is too much residual evidence which was sourced with great effort and perseverance from all over the world and from many languages and hidden histories, from artifacts and from all modern sources, to deny that the giants are merely a figment of our children's imagination, or a myth. I will state, and it is important to remember at this point, that ancient myths always seem to have a basis in reality. The newspaper articles through deep intensive research I have been able to find, and which you have all witnessed, are but scratching the surface of the true magnitude of the giants that the Smithsonian Institute alone, it seems, falsely state did not exist. Further evidence of all the Titans or men of renown from the Bible is evidenced in all cultures, from all continents across the world. You should note that unless you do your own research, unless you stop believing what strangers say, unless you break free from the dependency on others to provide you with only opinionated answers and not facts, then you will always remain ignorant of the real truth and facts. I ask this question of you all. If giants existed in today's world, and without question they do, if giant flora and fauna existed in today's world, and they did, then perhaps it is time to ponder if giants are truly just a myth and a figment of you and your children's imagination. We will revisit this fascinating and captivating story of those we have named giants, titans, gods, for a more intuitive, discerning, scientific evidence, religiously, historically epic technology and fact-based investigation later in the series. Now I leave you with a true and factual evidenced 21st century link, seeing is believing, to the giant that has not been widely reported to the majority of the world's people.
เมื่อไม่นานมานี้ทางจังหวัดกระบี่ได้ออกมาแถลงการอย่างเป็นทางการว่าในบริเวณถ้ำเขาขนาบน้ำได้ค้นพบโครงกระดูกขนาดยักษ์ของมนุษย์และงูซึ่งในขณะนี้ได้มอบหมายให้ทางคณะโบราณคดีเป็นผู้นำในการสำรวจและขุดค้น
We are now at Kaunkaunamnam caves and we found like a huge and complete skeleton of a primate with a huge reptile skeleton on the side. The height of the primate is estimated to be 6.5 meters. According to the skull and the tools, it might be a male. He is lying in a natural position.
ว่าโครงกระดูกมนุษย์ยักษ์เกือบครบสมบูรณ์แล้วรวมไปถึงกระโหลกศีรษะที่สมบูรณ์แบบกระดูกอกและกระดูกส่วนขาด้วยเหตุนี้เจ้าหน้าที่ตำรวจได้ทำการปิดกั้นพื้นที่เป็นที่เรียบร้อยแล้วและส่งมอบไปยังทีมโบราณคดีเพื่อทำการตรวจสอบต่อ